Graham, we've talked about it for years, that transition was always going to be the problem. Well, we are now experiencing the problem of too fast a transition, yet to talk about it somehow means you're a climate denier. I can't work that out, but that's the charge when people like you and I point out the obvious flaws of the system.
Well, that charge has been levelled for a long period of time, and in a way, the chickens are now coming home to roost. The way it's been best explained to me is that this has been a competition between economics and hope versus engineering and physics, and engineering and physics is always going to win. And that's basically what we're seeing now, that the sort of system that was in place has been degraded to the point where it can no longer be there to hold the thing together. What has been promised as a replacement doesn't operate as a replacement, and that has been obvious around the world for a long period of time. So it's not a matter of whether you believe this or whether you believe that. At the end of the day, it's what is ultimately going to work, and we've destroyed that to replace it with something that clearly isn't.
And BHP saying that they can't offload a coal mine, so they'll close it in 2030. What do you think that this means for the future of that particular industry that, as I pointed out earlier in the show, is a huge part of how we pay for police, hospitals, welfare and everything else?
That's right. And I think, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you were explaining how the corporate class has really been captured by this ecologically sustainable agenda. And the thing about businesses, they're pretty fickle. And when they realise that actually the weight is going to return to things that maybe won't have the same sort of stigma attached to them, they may change their mind pretty quickly. I've had a couple of reports this week. One is on the state of renewable energy globally, and it's showing, despite all the promises that have been made in Glasgow and elsewhere, emissions are growing, the use of coal and fossil fuels is growing, the share of energy provided by renewables is stagnant. And so this is a very, very expensive way to transition, and the thing that's not happening is the actual transition.
Well, and then as we talked about today, now, the government was very clear about 43%. I said with a stroke of the pen they could do it. Now they want to sort of play games in and around the parliament. OK, they've set their target. But there are going to be consequences for setting that target. And again, it's not heresy to point out that China is not applicable to anything until 2030. Nothing.
Yeah, well, that's right. Depends how you play the game, Paul, because most people around the world make the promise and set the target and don't actually do anything. So Australia, if we attempt to meet the target that's been set, then there is a very significant transformation that will need to happen in the economy, and it goes well beyond power generation into pretty much every facet of daily life. Now, this is a very quick timetable, and it's a very big task. So easy to say, as power is showing, much, much more difficult to do.
Crazy stuff. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it. Graham Lloyd is the Environment Editor and always a good read in the Australian newspaper.